Howard was used to the steady hum of New York City, the unceasing rhythm of honking taxi, murmuring crowds, and the occasional distant wail of sirens. In her late 20s, the half-Fulani beauty carried a quiet dignity despite the city's constant frenzy. By day, she worked diligently at a sprawling warehouse on the outskirts of Brooklyn, a place where the clatter of machinery and the shuffle of workers formed the background music of her life. Hawa is a woman of routine, self-reliant and reserved, content in her quiet existence until one unexpected message shattered her calm. It was a humid Tuesday afternoon when her phone buzzed. Howard glanced at her screen and frowned. The message was from a number she didn't recognize, yet the text was strangely familiar. The text message says, "Hey Howard, it's Choma. We work together at a warehouse. Remember? Let's catch up soon." Howard's brow furrowed. Howard thought in her mind, "Choma?" The name stirred a vague memory. Howard said to herself, an encounter during a shift change, perhaps a fleeting moment in a crowded break room, but nothing concrete. Nevertheless, curiosity nudged her, and after a moment of hesitation, she replied, "Hi, Choma. I'm sorry, I can't recall us meeting clearly. Can you remind me?" Her phone screen lit up moments later with a friendly reply. "Of course, we chatted briefly last month about the new inventory system. I thought we had more in common than just work," Chalmers said. "Let's meet up and talk properly. Do you fancy going for a coffee or lunch?" Chalmers texted. Howard mulled over the invitation. Despite the haziness of the first encounter, she wasn't the one to turn down the prospect of making a new connection, especially the one that promised camaraderie. They agreed to meet at a quaint cafe near the warehouse the following weekend. When the weekend arrived, Howard found herself seated at a small outdoor table in the cafe, sunlight dancing on the pavement. She waited expectantly, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her coffee cup. After a few minutes, a woman approached, a woman with a radiant smile and unmistakably Nigerian aura. "Hi, Hawa. I'm Choma," the woman said, extending a hand. Hawa stood to greet her, and despite her initial uncertainty, a sense of recognition slowly emerged. "Yes, yes, it's so nice to meet you properly," Hawa replied, shaking her hand. They settled into a conversation that started with polite inquiries about work and life, but soon meandered into personal interests and shared aspirations. Choma was vivacious and outgoing, with an infectious energy that made the conversation flow effortlessly. Yet, somewhere in the back of Howard's mind, a small note of caution lingered. There was something in Choma's gaze, a sharp calculating glimmer that Howard could not quite place. Yet Howard dismissed it as a mere intensity. Over the following weeks, the two continued to exchange messages and casual greetings at the warehouse. However, despite their initial connection, nothing particularly significant materialized. Their interactions were cordial but shallow. A series of brief chats in the break room, a shared laugh here and there. Time passed, and the memory of their meeting gradually faded into the background of Howard's busy life. One crisp evening in early December, as the holiday lights began to illuminate the city streets, Chalmers' text arrived with an unexpected proposition. It says, "Howard, how about dinner tonight? I found a fancy new restaurant downtown with live music. It's a perfect girls' night out. Good food, good vibes, and some real talk. What do you say?" says Joma. Howard paused before replying. Her instincts whispered caution. "I usually prefer to be sure about my plans before heading out, especially with dinner plans where food and drinks are involved." She reminded herself internally. Howard prided herself on her careful nature. She'd always insisted on supervising her meals, ensuring that nothing untoward could happen while she was absent-mindedly indulging in a night out. yet perhaps caught up in the warmth of the invitation and the promise of a memorable evening, Howard hesitated and eventually agreed. Later that evening, Howard prepared for the dinner meticulously. She dressed in a smart, elegant outfit that accentuated her natural beauty, a fitted dress that balanced sophistication with ease. Yet, as she neared the restaurant, her nerves got the best of her. Recalling her inner warning, she considered stepping back. The fleeting thought, a desire to see what the night held, overpowered her caution. Howard said to herself, I can keep an eye on my food and drink. She reassured herself. With that resolve, she stepped into the restaurant. The restaurant was a chic, modern venue adorned with subtle hints of vintage glamour, ambient lighting, and the gentle murmur of a live band playing soulful tunes set the stage for an evening that promised to be unforgettable. Howard took a seat, and moments later, Choma arrived. There was an odd intensity in Choma's eyes as she greeted Howard, a look that, in hindsight, hinted at hidden motives. Throughout dinner, Howard noticed that Choma frequently glanced at her with a peculiar expression, one that seemed to straddle between admiration and something darker, something unsettling. Howard's polite conversation became punctuated with these brief, lingering looks. She couldn't help but wonder if Chalmers' intentions went beyond mere friendship. As dinner progressed, Howard's thoughts were interrupted by a moment of self-consciousness. Needing to freshen up, she excused herself to the restroom, determined to quickly redo her makeup. Standing before the mirror, she dabbed on a bit of powder and took a deep breath. When she returned to the table, she found Choma sitting silently, her gaze fixed in an unnerving way. What's wrong? Howard asked tentatively as she resumed her seat. Nothing. You just look different, Choma replied, her voice measured and distant. Before Howard could probe further, the course of the meal was served. The food, beautifully presented and aromatic, beckoned Howard to indulge. Unbeknownst to Howard, Choma had already executed her subtle, sinister ritual, using her witchcraft eyes to spiritually poison the food, a dark art practiced in hushed circles and hidden from public knowledge. Howard, trusting in her instincts despite the nagging doubt, began to eat. The flavors were rich, the texture satisfying, but somewhere between the first and second bite, an ominous sensation began to creep into her consciousness, a disquiet she tried to ignore. Halfway through the meal, as our attempt to savor a bit of dessert, something snapped within her, a sharp intuition, or perhaps the creeping influence of the spiritual poisoning triggered an urge of panic. Without a word, leaving her half-finished plate behind. Let's go, she muttered under her breath, a tone urgent. Chalmers' eyes widened momentarily in surprise as Howard stormed out of the restaurant. Outside, under the cool evening sky, Howard ran after Chalmers, who was walking briskly down the neon-lit street. Wait, Chalmers! Howard called out, her voice echoing in the quiet night. But Chalmers didn't slow down. Chalmers disappearing into the maze of the city streets. Howard's heart pounded as she chased after her, determined to confront her about the sudden turn of evenings. Yet by the time she caught up, Choma had vanished into the crowd, leaving Howard alone, confused and incredibly unwell. Back at the apartment, Howard removed her dress, desperate to shake off the lingering effect of the evening. She collapsed onto her bed, the evenings of the night replaying in her mind, the restaurant and Choma's strange behavior, and that inexplicable moment of dread all swirled together, leaving her with an overwhelming sensation of foreboding. As night deepened, an oppressive presence seemed to press down on her, as though invisible hands were clutching at her very soul. Sleep, when it came, was restless and filled with dark, fragmented visions. Howard dreamt of twisting corridors, shadowy figures, and a pervasive sense of betrayal. When dawn finally broke, she awoke with a heavy aching chest and a disoriented mind. Her eyes felt strange, as if something had invaded them, and her entire body was weak, as though worms had begun to stir within her. In the following hours, the severity of her condition became undeniable. Howard felt lightheaded, unable to shake off the sickness feeling that had enveloped her since the ill-fated dinner. Frantic thoughts raced through her mind. Had she been poisoned? And if so, how could one even poison someone spiritually? In the midst of her agony, Howard's memory turned to a powerful woman, a wise healer from her past, whom she had once visited for spiritual herbs and remedies. Without wasting another moment, Howard reached for her phone and called the number she had saved long ago. Within minutes, she found herself being guided through the preparation of a potent liquid herb remedy, a concoction said to neutralize spiritual toxins. "Drink this slowly, Howard," the healer's gentle voice cracked through the phone. "Allow the herbs to cleanse you from within." The spiritual woman also says to Howard, "You must also pray and seek for forgiveness for any missteps that led you here." Howard followed the instruction diligently. The spiritual liquid, infused with ancient herbs and spiritual essence, began to work its magic. Gradually, the oppressive weight on her chest eased, and her vision cleared, as if a fog was lifting. Although still weak, Howard felt a spark of life returning to her. It was then that she remembered it was the last day of the year, a time for reflection, renewal, and prayer. Determined to reclaim her strength and dispel the dark residue of the evening, Howard donned her modest attire and headed to a nearby church. The building, with its tall stained glass windows and resonant choral hymns, provided a sanctuary for her troubled soul. Inside, amidst the soft glow of candlelight and the hushed murmurs of fellow congregants, Howard poured out her heart in prayer. She asked for forgiveness, guidance, and protection from the malevolent forces that had sought to harm her. The spiritual energy in the church was palpable, and as the prayers filled the sacred space, Howard felt a deep healing warmth seep into her spirit. In the days that followed, Howard's physical health steadily improved. The shadow of the poisoning began to lift, and she regained her vitality. Though the memory of that fateful night lingered like a dark echo, she attempted to reach out to Choma, seeking answers and perhaps even reconciliation, but discovered that Choma's digital presence had been evaporated. Her social media accounts were deleted, her phone number unreachable, a ghost of a woman she once knew. Howard was left with many unanswered questions. Why had Choma chosen to use her unique abilities for such a nefarious act? What had been the true motive behind the elaborate ruse? Had there been a hidden agenda at work, or was it simply a manifestation of personal malice? The lack of revolution gnawed at Howard, leaving her with a cautious distrust of those who entered her life. For a time, Howard withdrew from social interaction, immersing herself in her work at the warehouse and seeking solace in the familiar rhythms of daily life. Yet, as the year drew to close and a new one dawned, she resolved that she would not allow the darkness of that night to define her future. Instead, she embraced her newfound strength. tempered by wisdom and vigilance. On a crisp New Year's morning, Howard stood at her apartment window, watching the city come alive with renewed promise. The ordeal had transformed her. She was now more cautious, more discerning, and above all, more resilient. Her experience had taught her that while the modern world was full of opportunity, it was also fraught with hidden dangers that could lurk behind even the most charming of facades. As she stepped out into the bustling streets, Howard vowed to always protect herself, physically, emotionally, and most of all, spiritually. She continued to visit the healer regularly, fortified her protective rituals, and prayed for guidance in all her endeavors. With time, she learned to navigate the complexities of trust and deception, finding solace in the truth that every dark night eventually gives way to the light of a new day. Though the mysterious incident with Choma remained an unresolved chapter in her life, Howard's journey of healing and self-discovery was only just beginning, and as she forged ahead, she carried with her the hard-earned wisdom that in a world where not everyone has good intentions, one must always look beyond the surface and listen to the quiet inner voice that guides us to safety. Howard's experience became a quiet legend among her close friends, a cautionary tale of beauty, betrayal, and the delicate balance between trust and self-preservation. In the years followed, she transformed her ordeal into a mission to help others recognize and protect themselves against subtle spiritual harm. She organized small gatherings where she shared her story, taught the importance of spiritual hygiene, and encouraged people to trust their intuition. In a modern country far from the lands of her ancestral home, Howard had discovered that the battles one fights are not always visible, and that true strength comes from within. The scars of that night serve as a reminder that while the world can be a dangerous place, it is also filled with opportunities for growth, renewal, and the unwavering hope of a brighter tomorrow. Hello everyone, I'm Hawa, Benita Hawa to be precise, and this story is my story. Yeah, I decided to tell my story to open people's eyes so that they can be careful with who they call friends. Not everyone that you see out there is ordinary. Some people are carrying spiritual forces, and they will do anything that it takes to bring you down, to sabotage your blessings, to make you sick. If they can't stop what God has for you, they will make you sick. And your sickness, you might think, is ordinary, but it's not. It's spiritual. So I advise everyone to take their spiritual life very, very seriously. I thank God now I'm doing so much better. I'm still recovering from spiritual attack. My mental health and my physical health isn't 100%, but it is way, way better than before. And I thank God. And I'm still fighting the battle. If you're new into this channel, make sure you subscribe, share my videos, and always like my videos. Thank you for watching. See you next time.